Hello, my name is Tim Johnson, and I am the priest and pastor of the Episcopal Church of the Advent in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. Each year, in the weeks leading up to Christmas, we hear a certain story from Mark's Gospel. It's a story that comes from chapter 13 of Mark's Gospel, in which Jesus is making a very ominous prediction about the end of the world. In this prediction, Jesus says that the sun will be darkened and ultimately the stars will fall from the sky. This prediction, as I said, has a very dark and ominous tone about it, and it feels like an odd reading for the weeks leading up to Christmas. But if we look deeper into this passage and look at the context in which Jesus was speaking, we find that these words of Jesus, which on the surface feel dark and ominous and foreboding, actually contain within them a really profound promise, a promise of hope. You see, Jesus is in Jerusalem. It's in the final days of his earthly life. He's gathered with his disciples, and they're walking past the temple in Jerusalem. The temple was the most important building in Jerusalem. It was not only a sign of the religious identity for the kingdom of Judah, for the temple is the place where the people of Judah believed that the holiness of God actually dwelt. But the temple also symbolized the national unity and national independence of the people of Judah. And for Jesus' disciples, it probably was the largest building next to the king's palace. It would have been the largest building that they would have ever seen. And so there Jesus is with his disciples outside the temple courts. And his disciples look up at the temple and they comment on the size of the stones, these massive stones. And they're commenting to Jesus on just how big these stones are. As I said, this would have been probably the largest building they would have ever seen. And then Jesus says to them, you know, as wonderful and as grand as this temple is, there will come a time when this temple will not be here, when the stones of this temple will be torn asunder. And ultimately, Jesus' prediction plays out. The Romans eventually conquer Jerusalem and eventually tear down the stones. So what Jesus then goes on to say is essentially, don't put your faith in things that are temporal, things that can be destroyed. For he says, as glorious as this temple is, don't put your faith in this building, because this building will not last forever. Instead, put your faith in God. And he goes on to say that even the natural world, even the sun itself will turn dark one day, and the stars are not even permanent, for they too will fall from the sky. But the one thing that is permanent in our lives is our relationship with God. And so Jesus, in this passage that feels foreboding and ominous, is actually reminding them of God's eternal nature and of God's faithfulness. And so when we look at this passage from that context, it makes really good sense that we hear these words in this season before Christmas. Because Christmas, this celebration of Jesus' birth, reminds us that God has come to us. God is drawn near to us in the person of Jesus. And Jesus invites us into a relationship with God. And this relationship is eternal. Nothing can take it away from us. Grand buildings, they will eventually fall. The sun, it will go dark. The stars will fall from the skies. But God is eternal, and our relationship with God is eternal. And that is indeed good news. So thank you for joining me in these brief moments, and please join us for worship any Sunday of the year. Most Sundays during the school year, we worship at 7:45, 9 o'clock, and 10:30. During the summers, it's at 7:45 and 9 o'clock. And if you do not have a church home where you are worshiping this Christmas, please join us on Christmas Eve at 5 p.m. or 9 o'clock. Take care, and God bless.